Assalamu alaikum, dear fellows, and I hope you all are doing well. Today we will discuss about how to frame research questions and how to and objectives for any original article on which you want to work. So we will be discussing that how you will frame a research questions and then how you will frame or how you will write down your research objectives for any type of original research which you want to conduct and the purpose of this session is to train the students in framing research questions aligned with the original article standards, which are required for the original articles, and also to convert the clinical observation into the scientifically testable research question. Because during any labs or any wards or clinical exposure, you face different questions from patients and you see different conditions, so that things can be used for that purpose, can be used for that research questions, and also to design the smart objective for data collection and analysis, that how you will design the smart objective. So role in original article, what are the role of research question in any original article? So basically research questions and objectives is basically the core of the article, and this research question and objective will determine the structure of the abstract and the structure of the methodology section, the research design which will be used for that particular study, and the data tables, that how you will analyze and how you will represent your data. It solely depends upon the research questions or the objectives. And then the result interpretation, that how you will interpret your results based on the research questions you have previously given in previously submitted in that particular study, or the research questions you have mentioned for that particular study. For example, if your research question is that prevalence of anemia, then your data table must show different things like hemoglobin level, age, and gender, etc. details. So the research question define that how this research will proceed and how it will work and how it will be structured and designed. So basically, research question are the core of any research article. And then after research, we have studied that what are the role in original research articles. So basically, what is research question? Anyone can ask that question, that what is research question? Research question is basically clearly defined and answerable clearly about a specific medical issue. If you have any topic and if you are facing any medical issue, then you can easily design research question on that particular medical issue. For example, if this research question can be derived from the literature gaps by studying different research articles and finding and working on the research gaps present in that particular articles. Or the second thing is patient observation. You are in your clinical year, or you are analyzing or examining different patients, and then you observe them. You can easily form research question. For example, is low vitamin D associated with the postpartum depression in Pakistani women. So, if you are analyzing women, if you are working in some ward which is related to psychology, psychological issues or depression or anxiety, and you face different things, so you can form questions from that particular details or from the patient's observation. And what is the importance of research question in the medical research? So basically, the research question guide you through the ethical approvals. It will help you that how you will get or obtain your ethical approval, where you will define that these are my research questions, this is my synopsis, and I'm working on that particular research. And you can easily get ethical approval for that if that is valid and properly written. And it also set up the result and discussion structure. When you will be writing results and discussion, then you will be also referring to your research question and will be trying to answer to give answer to that research question. And it also focuses the study design. Your research questions will define that what type of study design will you use during your research or during the conduction of that particular research project. And the research question is also important because it clarifies the variables, and from your research question, you can easily then pick up your variables and dependent and independent variables. And it will also, for example, exposure or outcome. You want to study exposure of some particular disease or some particular condition or some particular medicine or radiation, and then want to study the outcome. So the research question you have explained must be like you have to find out the exposure or to expose something to some medicines and then find out the outcome. And it also helps the data overload, and through research question you can easily mention the very core of your research, the very importance of your research, the way you want to conduct research. And definitely the research question contains each and everything. And what will be the characteristics of a strong research question? First, now we will study that particular thing. So, the main criteria for research question is the finer criteria, and in finer criteria, we have already studied this finer criteria, which is feasible, interesting, novel, ethical, and relevant. The research question must be feasible, it must be interesting, it must must be novel, ethical, and relevant. For example, there is a research question that is hand sanitizers more effective than hand washing in preventing hospital infections among nurses? So this is some is, if you can see, it's feasible, is it can be easily conducted, it is ethical, it is relevant, and it might not be that much novel. And it is interesting that definitely if someone want to conduct that type of research, then it must be interesting for that for them. So let's discuss the clinical best sources of research question, that how you can find out questions based on the clinical sources, based on the available sources you have during your duty time, or during your during your internship, or after that time during your TMO ships. So during your duty time, or during a time which you spent with the patient in the hospital, or just like ward rounds, you can easily pick research question from that ward rounds. If you are in some particular ward, let's say you are in gastro ward, and there are some particular issue which is very increasing, and you are seeing that more and more patients are getting reported in that particular department. So you can found research question, you can formulate research question, and then start research on that particular issue in that particular uh, ward, or that particular area or department in which you are working. And then lab reports, you can also get ideas from the lab reports. If you have access to lab reports, or you are studying lab reports of different patient, and let's say in one day you referred 50 patients for malaria diagnosis, and 40 of them came back with positive results. So there might be a question, that is malaria prevalent in Peshawar? Is malaria increasing in Peshawar, or in Karachi, or in Lahore, or in any other districts, or any other area? And recurring the frequent patient complaints, if patients are complaining about some particular issue or some particular disease, that can also trigger a question. And then the recurring diagnostic errors, you can also formulate question from, if some diagnostic test or diagnostic machine is not working properly, or giving wrong results or false positive results. So you can also form a questions on that particular thing. Let's suppose that we can there is a simple example, that high recurrence rate of UTIs in diabetic female patient. You are in a ward where most of the diabetic female patient visitors, and they have issues of the UTIs, and there is recurrence rates and high rates. So you can work on that particular area, and you can formulate that question from that particular area. Now there is a descriptive and analytical type of research questions. The research question which you will formulate might be descriptive, just like they might be related to the prevalence or the frequency, which are usually called as cross-sectional study. For example, that what is the frequency of low hemoglobin among the antenatal patients, and then the research question might be analytical. For example, it might be related to the cause or association or risk factor, like in case control or cohort study. For example, is BMI associated with infertility in PCOS patients? So you can easily work out on that thing, that what type of study you want to conduct. Either you want to conduct a descriptive study, or you want to conduct an analytical study, and you can formulate your research question related to that particular area, or that particular study design. Now, how you can formulate research question by using the PICO framework? It is very common and usually used in the meta-analysis and systematic reviews, and you can also use it in the original articles. for the original article. So if you are, there are certain things which you have to keep in mind. If you want to conduct any type of study, so you have to look for certain things. First one is the P, which is patient or the population, what type of population you want to study, what type of patient you want to study. And the next thing is the I, intervention or the exposure, that what type of intervention you want to do. If you want to study about some particular apes or some particular condition, or what exposure you want to give them to that particular patient, or what type of exposure study you want to conduct in that particular population or patients. And then comparison, what you want to compare, what you want to, if you want to compare health condition with some particular disease or diabetic condition or any other condition, like health activities with the diabetic conditions. And then the O, which is outcomes, and the outcome, what type of outcome you are expecting, what you want to expect, what you are expecting from that particular state. So this is the PICO framework. Sometimes S is also added to that particular PICO, which then we call, then we study as PICOs. S means study design. So you can also work, you have to work on that thing, that what type of study design I will use in that particular study. For example, in children with asthma, which is children, the population is children, is a spacer device, and the spacer device is the intervention better than a nebulizer. The nebulizer and spacer devices will be compared, which is the comparison, and reducing ER visits, which is the outcome. You want to reduce the ER visits. So your research question, and research question, you can formulate research question with that particular PICO framework, and through different, using different criterias or different research articles, you can find out all these things. And in different research questions, you will be working on these things, and you will study these things. That these things will come in front of you while working on any research article. So this is the PICO framework, which is commonly used, where you look for the patient, the intervention, the comparison, and the outcome of that particular disease or particular condition, and then frame your research question according to that PICO framework. So then, what are the examples of the well-structured questions? There the research questions which you formulate might be well-structured, or that might be, that there might be good questions, or them, and there will be bad questions. So, first of all, let's say that what is this is a research question, that what is the association between shift work and sleep quality in junior doctors? Like, you people know that during the internship, you have different shifts of work and different schedule. So you want to study that thing. So you want to study, this will be the associative study. And if you look at this thing, juniors doctor of the population, shift work and shift quality is the comparison, and association is the intervention. They want to study intervention, and doctors are the population, you also know that. So the next is the, does vitamin D supplementation reduce insulin resistance in PCOS patients? So you can also find out all this PICO material in these things, and this questionnaire. And the third one is that what is the impact of early versus late ambulation on recovery after cesarean section? So these are the examples of the well structured question, which are well structured, and the PICO format has been utilized in that particular question. So now, there are some type of common mistakes that you must avoid during any type of research work, or formulating any type of research questions. You have to keep in mind that thing, and you have to make sure to avoid that common mistakes. The common mistakes are the question too ambiguous, that what causes fatigue. So this is very ambiguous question, and if you want to find out causes of the fatigue, there will be thousands or millions of causes. So you can't use that particular questions. You have to you avoid these things, that your question must not be too ambiguous. And the next thing is the multiple outcomes in one question. You add the multiple outcomes that in one single question. For that purpose, if you have multiple outcomes, you have to design different questions. You can use 5 or 4 questions for that particular study which you want, where you have multiple outcomes and you want to study the multiple outcomes. So the next thing is the unethical or unfeasible, non-feasible topics. If you are studying on some topic which is not ethically correct, or there is ethical concerns with that particular topic, and you want to study that particular topic, this is also not a good thing, and you have to avoid that particular mistakes. You have to choose the ethical and feasible topics, and you have to avoid research questions like can we eradicate cancers from Pakistan? So it is that this is not something you can do, and this is not something we can find out in single research. Even if you can work for continuously many years, you will not be able to find out the exact cause or eradicate cancer from some specific country. So you have to avoid all these things. You have to make sure that the questions are not too ambiguous. You have to make sure that there are not multiple outcomes mentioned in a single question. For that purpose, you have to write down separate research question for different outcomes, and then you have to make sure that the research questions are ethical and are feasible, and you have to avoid such question like we discussed, that you can't eradicate cancer from Pakistan in single research article or single research study. So the next thing that is that this was all about, like previously we studied, that was all about research question. Now we will study the research objectives, that what are the research objectives and how it can help you in your studies and your research work. So research objectives are the specific goals that are derived from research question. From that research, particular research question which you have formulated previously, this will help you to work on your research objectives, to formulate your research objectives, and the research questions which you have formulated will help you to formulate that research objectives. And it also, the research objective will guide you in the data collection, data analysis, and the presentation of that particular study. And it must be, the research objective must be written in the future tense. For example, to determine the prevalence of undergraduate status in the MBBS students. So this is the subject objective, and you have to work on your research objective, and you have to look at your research question while working on the research objectives, that what type of research questions you have, and then you will be working on the research objectives according to the research questions. Then the research will guide you, or the research objective will guide you during the data collection and during the data analysis and the presentation of that study, and you have to write it in the future tense. And then what are the characteristics of good objectives? The good research objectives are clear and focused. They are measurable, can be easily, you can easily work on that and find out. And that must be related to your variables. The research objectives which you want to formulate must be related to the variables you have selected for your particular study. And then it must be aligned with the questions and the methodology. It must be aligned with the research questions. And for example, to compare systolic BP in smokers versus non-smokers. So this might be an objective. So you have to make sure that the research objectives are clear and focused. Like if you look at this thing, to compare systolic BP in smokers versus non-smokers, and then measurable, they are related to your variables, and it are aligned with the questions and methodology which will follow. And then there are types of research objectives. One is general research objective, and the second one is specific research objectives. So the general objective of the study is the overall aim of the complete study, which you discussed during your introduction write-up, and the specific objective was the stepwise outcome which you want to assess. And for example, general objective is, let's say, to assess metabolic complication in type 2 diabetes. So it is a general objective, and then your specific objective is to evaluate lipid profile and to measure the HbA1c level. So it is something very specific. So there will be two type of objectives: general objective and specific objectives. And for example, from topic to question to objectives, let's suppose this is your topic, that obesity and adolescence. So this is the topic which you want to study, or which you want to conduct study. And the research question is that what is the prevalence of obesity among 15 to 19-year-old students in Karachi? Let's say you want to conduct that particular study in Karachi. So the research objective will be to calculate BMI, to assess dietary habits, and to explore the sedentary behavior. So these things will help you to complete your study. If you look at these things, the topic, research question, and the objectives, these all are related, and these all objectives and this research question and this topic support each other, and they are aligned. So aligning your objectives with the study design is very important. If you are working on cross-sectional research design, you have to estimate the prevalence, compare the subgroups, and then if you are working on case control study, you have to study the associations, and in cause study, you have to observe the outcome over time, and the objective must match your study design and the analysis type. If the objective does not match your study design and analysis type, then it will not be a good objective. So the next thing will be the hypothesis formation, and we will discuss these hypothesis things in detail, but this was related to that particular topic, so we will discuss it shortly. So hypothesis is a testable prediction which is based on the question on the research objective. So the research objective which we have formulated previously and the research question on which we have worked, this both research question and research objective will formulate your research hypothesis. And if you look at the hypothesis, there are normally two types of hypotheses. One is called null hypothesis, in which we say that there is no association between the variables, and the second one is the alternative hypothesis. For null hypothesis, we explain it or we represent it with HO naught or H0 or HO, and the alternative hypothesis we mention abbreviated with H1, and the alternative hypothesis say that association exists. So for example, if you are working on the HB level of hostel and day scholar students, and you want to formulate a null hypothesis, so your null hypothesis will be that there is no difference in HB level between hostel and day scholar girls or boys or population. And the association which in which we state the alternative hypothesis in which we claim that the association exists will be that hostel girls have lower HB. So this is something you have to work on, and all this will be measured from the research objective or the research question which you have formulated previously. And how you will link the objective to the data collection. So every objective must be clear, must result in a table, chart, or figure. So if you are forming any objective, that must result in a table, chart, or figure, or some other design or some other detail. So design your questionnaire and checklist accordingly. And if your objective is to compare the systolic BP, so you must record systolic values in all participant, and that objective now become data because you recorded the systolic values, so this become data now. So each objective must result in table, chart, or figure, or something else. So if we discuss the summary of today's session, we have studied the research question which we uh, examined as the heart of any research article of your original article, and then the objectives, which are the measurable steps towards answering the research question, and the research objectives and research question must be feasible, ethical, and statistically testable, and you can use different framework like PICO and Finer to frame clearly research objective and research question. So your homework for next session is that you have to choose a clinical issue and frame one research question using PICO, and then write one general objective and two specific objectives for that particular study. And if you work on that thing, you can share it with us. We will analyze and we will review that work which you have done. And then this was all about today's session. Thank you so much for your participation, and we will have next session. So if you have any question right now, you can share it with us. We will respond to each and every question.